Good morning, everyone. My name is Katia Giri. I am the host of Creative Mornings Munich, and I am super excited to see so many of you here today with us. Happy Friday. I'm going to leave it to my team to take it away, starting with Paula, my co-host. But I just wanted to say that I will be sharing something very special at the end of this session. So I highly encourage you to stay with us until the very end so that you can hear it. And apart from that, thank you to Helena and Susanne to be with us here today. And yes, Paula, take it away.
So this month's topic is release. The illustration is by Ali Runion, and I just wanted to say about release is that releasing your thoughts and your claims is a very important practice that can help you in your everyday life. So here, Helena and Tatiana, we talk about how to release our thoughts or claims in a constructive way, that is how to give, or the art to give feedback. So I welcome Susanne and Helena today to the virtual stage. And thank you very much for being here today. We're gonna have a few minutes changing presentations. So, kleine Moment. Stop share.
Thank
and
you.
Now I'm gonna give the spotlight.
I already granted the spotlight.
Okay.
So we are very well synchronized. And I guess Susanne and Helena, you can take it away.
Nice. Thanks everyone for the very nice welcome and for the opportunity to speak here today about release and feedback. We're going quickly to introduce ourselves before we dive deeper into the topic. So my name is Susanne. I'm a linguist by training, but today I work as a community manager and head of diversity, equity and inclusion for ThoughtWorks Germany, based in Munich.
Yeah, I'm Helena, and I studied social anthropology in Munich and also did some computer science on the side. And this is how I basically ended up being a colleague of Susanne at ThoughtWorks. I'm working as a business analyst, so I'm working a lot in software delivery teams, and obviously feedback there is also a crucial skill in order to improve our collaboration within the team. And that's why I'm really happy to speak about this today.
The topic for today is feedback, continuous development for humans, but actually it's more about a story of a journey, because feedback for me for a long time was more this buzzword that people used in business trainings, and everybody said it's a very useful tool. But to be honest with you, for a long time, I just did not understand, why is it useful? What is this feedback thingy actually about? So what do I need to do and how do I learn that? And I also was often scared before the situation. Somebody said, oh, I want to share feedback. That was more something that came with a fear than with the feeling that it's really helpful for myself. That changed when I started working for an organization that has feedback really implemented into like their daily processes, because I had the opportunity to first realize that what I was scared of does not have to do a lot with feedback, and actually that there is no book that you can read and then out of it suddenly you're good in giving or receiving feedback. It's a journey. It's a continuous training that you have to put yourself into, and step by step you can like get better in it and learn more about it. Maybe Helena, you also want to share some of your thoughts around feedback.
Yeah, I don't know how all of you feel, but for me, feedback was kind of a topic I was kind of anxious about, I guess. It always felt a bit scary to get feedback, especially like being afraid of negative feedback, because in school or even at university, kind of negative feedback is what you wanted to avoid. You want to, I don't know, get a good grade, and how you do that usually is by receiving lots of praise and little negative comments. So I kind of strive for not having that. And my perspective changed when I started working more with people rather than on my projects on my own, because this is when it becomes crucial to me and or to the whole team. And my journey on how this changed for me, or some tools that helped me to do that, is what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, so our goal for today is sharing our learnings and either kick off your journey on feedback or continue it wherever you are currently. To start with that, we actually want to clarify, what do we mean by feedback? So here's some basics. Feedback is actually a gift. Whether it's done well or poorly, somebody has taken time and emotional investment to give it to you. So please say thank you. We do give feedback because we care about someone. It might be a personal relationship that we have or a professional one, but usually we want to help someone to improve or to get better in something. And what is also very important, when you get feedback from someone, same as with a gift, you choose how to use it. Then it belongs to you. You can decide whether you want to use it and when you want to use it, or if it's even currently a priority for you. What I also would like to ask you to keep in mind, when you give feedback to someone, same as with a gift, you gave it away. It's not yours anymore. Now the other person can decide what they're going to do with the feedback and whether they're going to use it or if it matches with their priorities. We usually talk about positive feedback or constructive feedback. Negative feedback is actually not a real feedback, because letting somebody know what they're either good in or that they're good in something and just telling them, oh, you did a nice presentation, without not going any further or deeper, or the other way around, letting somebody know, that was not so good, but not going into more specific details, is actually not helpful. Also, the next time I will not know what I could do better, what I could improve to become better in, for example, giving a presentation. Same as the other way around, we should have a goal. So the goal is that we have an impact, or can let somebody know what the impact is and what they're good in. Also, when we want to share constructive feedback, we want to actually let them know what could be improved, so that the next time maybe something can be done differently. We do that because people might have blind spots. Often we don't realize what we're actually good at, or where we might have patterns, what does not work so well, because we're so used to how we are and what we do that we might not realize. Over to you, Helena.
Yeah, so basically the part where you are the person giving feedback to someone. This is actually the part where I personally struggle most with, and this is why I want to talk about this. And maybe I want to hand this question also back to you. Why does it feel so difficult to give feedback? I don't know if someone wants to unmute and give a quick answer, or answer in the chat.
Well, it's difficult because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings sometimes, or maybe because you are not really sure if what you're saying maybe is the right comment or something. I don't know if anybody else. Sofu says afraid of saying something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And that really, maybe not sure how to say what you mean exactly. Like, how do you phrase something to not make the other person feel bad, and yeah, how do you approach this? And I have found a few tools that help with that. I can say for myself, it never gets to a point where you like feel super comfortable giving maybe also constructive feedback. But what I would say is that if you practice it more often, it gets much easier. And also, and that brings me to my next slide, it is actually a good thing that we do care and we don't want to hurt the other person. So this concept is from a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It's an interesting book to read. They also have a podcast where they talk about feedback kind of topics. They deal a lot with, in the podcast, topics around leadership as well. So I think it's quite interesting. And I especially like this quadrant where you have care personally on the 1 scale and challenge directly. And when we think of negative feedback, we often think about this kind of obnoxious aggression, where we have someone who cares very little about a person and challenges them directly by saying, yeah, your work is shit, I don't know. This is the kind of thing we all want to avoid. And this is, I think, why it also feels very difficult to give feedback. On the other hand, you have situations where people don't challenge directly, where they just don't say anything or say something they don't really mean. And that is, or they call that a manipulative insincerity. And the other end to obnoxious aggression kind of is ruinous empathy. So that's the quadrant I guess I tend to fall in a lot of times. I mean, this is not a personality trait. All of us can be in different quadrants at many times. But it's basically where you care so much about a person, you don't want to hurt them at all. And yeah, you just don't challenge them because you don't want to make them feel bad. And the kind of sweet spot they identified is a radical candor. So it's basically a place where you care personally about a person, and you also make that clear in the conversation, but you still challenge them directly, because if you don't challenge people, it might have even worse consequences. Maybe in a work context, if you never give an employee negative feedback or constructive feedback, but in the end, the work is not doing what it's expected to do, you might end up having to fire that person in a very dramatic event. Or another example from the podcast, which I really liked, is they told a story about crossing a road with a dog who just ran over the road and almost got run over by a car. And someone approached the person who told the story and was like, hey, I can really see you love that dog, but if you are not going to teach it to sit, you are going to get it killed. And this really, for me, was a really good example, because if the person didn't say, I can really see you care about the dog, it would have been much more difficult for the person to accept this kind of feedback. And this way, it's much easier also to take in. Yeah. So this is kind of the setting in which we want to give feedback, but that still maybe doesn't help with how to exactly deliver it. And this is why I find the SBI model quite helpful, which helps us with phrasing feedback in a way that it is as helpful as possible. So we have the situation where we want to talk about the context of the behavior. So when did it happen? Where did it happen? Who was involved? Then we have the behavior itself. So talking about the specific behavior you are giving feedback on. What exactly happened? What were the actions the person did? Maybe you have some quotes. And then most importantly, the impact. So talk about the perceived or the real impact of the behavior in question. How were you personally affected by what they did? This doesn't mean like the person is a bad person. It just means they did something that had an impact on you or the team or whoever. And I'll give you 2 examples. One would be at the client meeting earlier, you balanced sharing ideas while hearing from them nicely. The client told me afterwards that they thought we clearly understood their needs. This would be an example for reinforcing feedback, where you want to tell someone this was really effective, that this worked really well, and hopefully the person can take really concrete advice from that, because it is a really concrete example. The second example, see, when you presented the proposal to the team, so the situation, the team was involved, you presented everything and held all of their questions until the end. And then the impact was, that made me feel like you don't welcome my input, and I also forgot a lot of what I wanted to say. So this is quite clear on what the impact was. It doesn't mean that the person who held the questions back intended to do any of that. It just talks about that was the impact, and it opens the space to for them to change for the next session. Yeah, a few more things about how to deliver most effective feedback is to do it frequently. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think feedback is some kind of muscle that you can train by doing it more often. It also gets easier over time if it's getting normalized. It should obviously be accurate, so make sure you choose words wisely and be prepared, and obviously only share facts and yeah, things that are correct. It also should be specific, so the more specific you can be, the better the person can act on it. And part of that is also do it timely, so if an event has been lying in the past for 2 weeks, it might not be as effective. Yeah. One animation went wrong, but yeah, some more tips would be offer support if it's appropriate. So not everyone will want to have support, but maybe you can support the person work on the feedback you gave them. And a crucial thing also is ask the person before you give the feedback if it's okay for them to receive the feedback, because sometimes people just don't have the headspace for it. They have other things going on, and it's completely okay to say, no, I cannot take feedback in at the moment. Yeah, come prepared and also think about how you phrase things. And also accept if the receiver does not act on the feedback you gave them, because they might have their own priorities and goals. So it's really, like Susanne mentioned earlier, it's a gift. So they decide how to use it. And back to Susanne.
Thank you. So actually, there's also another part of feedback, and this is the part of receiving feedback. And this one is actually similarly challenging as giving feedback. because a lot of it depends on our reaction. Positive feedback can make us happy, but a lot of people also get embarrassed and don't know how to react. I, for example, tended often to do some jokes, what actually made me then feel uncomfortable and also the other person. And especially constructive feedback makes people feel uncomfortable. Often the reaction is that we have, I need to escape. It's a classic fight and flight effect. We have feelings like shock, anger, resistance. What I want to let you know is this is super normal. Everybody has that to a certain degree because it puts us in this moment in an uncomfortable situation. But we have to keep in mind that with our reaction, we send a message. So there are two parts actually of feedback. The one is the actual message that we get, the feedback that somebody tells us. And the second part is our reaction to it. So we remember feedback is a gift, and actually, especially giving tough feedback to someone can be quite hard, and not everybody is good at it. And when we react angry or with resistance, probably that will lead to that the other person might not give us feedback again. And that's not what we want. This is not our goal, because actually we want to improve and we want to have an impact. And so this is important to reflect on that. What is actually useful is when we ask actively for feedback beforehand, that we say, I don't know, before we are moderating a talk, before we're facilitating a meeting, we ask someone, hey, can you please give me feedback? And as Helena mentioned before, when we're very specific about it, I want to have feedback about how I structure my facilitation and some other details. That first makes it much easier for the other person to give a specific feedback. And on the other hand side, it helps us to not get into this very uncomfortable situation because we're innerly already prepared for it. But still, it can be tough to get this feedback sometimes. So remember, you cannot control your first fight and flight reaction, but you can actually control what happens next. What helped me on the journey was to already take some notes while somebody's talking, because that gives me some time to do something and also to reflect already. Then take a deep breath and say thank you. Maybe it's possible to reflect why we're struggling with that feedback, or if it's really something where we feel uncomfortable and we don't know how to react, just schedule a follow-up. Ask if you can reflect on it and talk about it another time. Try to put yourself into the other person's perspective, and that also helps with time. I think what is also very helpful is don't get mad, get curious. So instead of asking what is wrong with this feedback, ask what might be right with it. I have often the reaction that I deny, oh, I'm not doing that, or I just did this in this one moment because I was very tired and then that happened that day. Actually, it does not matter. In the end, I had an impact in this very moment and somebody wants to share that with me. We have a bit simplified example for that. That would be the feedback, you're always late. First, this is actually not good feedback because words like always or never are not really specific. But anyways, somebody lets us know. So I can ask myself, what is wrong with this feedback? Or what might be right with it? Well, I could ask myself, or I could respond, always, I don't think so. Or 2 minutes here or there, why is this important? But actually, I could also see what I can learn from that. Whether 2 minutes here or there are important to me or not, the other person values timelines. To them, it's important. So it tells me something about the other person. Even 2 minutes don't get unnoticed. And in this very moment, I had a negative impact. So if I, for example, care about this person or they're somehow important to me, I just know that the next time I probably be on time because it's valuable to them. I can still be not on time for another person who does not value that like that. So the feedback that we get is always also learning that we have from somebody else. Last but not least, we want to summarize some things that we've learned today before we start and get into a discussion, or also looking forward to your questions. So what is very important is treat feedback as a gift that you decide how to use. As a giver, you can ask actively if somebody wants to have feedback, but also accept a no. They might not have the capacity right now. Come prepared. That makes it more comfortable for you and also for the other person to get some takeaways. Accept the receiver's priorities or own goals. Offer support if it's appropriate, and be open to a follow-up. When you're in the position of a feedback receiver, make it a conversation or ask actively before about feedback. And please say thank you. Take notes for later reflection and check if it fits with your goals. Plan your actions and follow up with the giver. From my side, what I can share, what helped me was the learning that I decide what I can do with it and not have to take everything into account that somebody's sharing with me, and just taking my time. I don't have to react immediately. That was very helpful for me. Maybe Helena, you also have something to share.
Yeah, in the end, what stuck with me often is those kind of like small constructive comments. And one example, I was in a training situation and I felt like I have to present something for the group because I felt like it's my duty and my role. I should do that. And I received the feedback afterwards. Hey, there were so many other people who are specialized in the topic you talked about. Maybe just give them the space next time. And of course, in that moment, it felt like, damn it, I did something wrong, whatever. But it really stayed with me. And even though it was a really minor event, and the person who gave me that feedback gave me many other feedbacks as well, also positive, this kind of thing stayed with me, and I think about it until today, and I use it in my work. So I feel it really helped me improve my ways of working with a team. And yeah, I think my biggest learning is that I can appreciate constructive and negative feedback as well as the positive one. And yeah, I think this is probably the end of our presentation, and we would like to open up the space and I don't know, hear about your thoughts and experiences. And
I actually think what would be a nice end, because I liked Tatjana's quote in the beginning, and I think it fits very well also with the presentation. So the goal is not to be perfect, but the goal is to be better today, also with feedback.
That's very true.
Thank you so much, Helena and Susanne. This was really inspiring. I get it. It got us all thinking about feedback, about how we give, how we receive feedback. While you were speaking, I don't know if you had an eye on the chat, but there was quite a discussion happening there. So I would like to simply invite anyone who would like to unmute themselves, ask a question to Helena or Susanne, or just share a little bit about either what you have already written in the chat or something new. Maybe I have seen something that I found very interesting and that we haven't touched upon, was the comment of Tatjana about the cultural difference in giving feedback. So maybe Tatjana, you could unmute yourself and share it with the rest once again.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I think in terms of like we always focus on like we want to have diverse teams, we want to have a lot of cultures, and I've noticed that in workplaces many times there were people from other cultures, and they are just expecting you to give them different feedback. And I was always seeing that actually HR or managers just didn't pay attention to it, like considering the cultural background from that person and asking that person whether she or he is aware how feedback is given in Germany. So question to our speakers is, how do you bridge that gap, and what do you do to avoid this kind of cultural misunderstandings when giving feedback?
Yeah, maybe I can start. I don't know. I attended a training. It was a 5-week training with people from all over the world, from, I don't know, India, China, the US, really a great range of people. And it definitely is a challenge to communicate with people from different cultures, because habits are different. I think what worked for us in that case is that we had really open conversations about this kind of things, like what do we mean by feedback? Why do we give feedback? To kind of set a common understanding for the whole group. It still stays like the challenges, I would say, don't go away, and you still should take those things into consideration. But I think most importantly, build up a relationship with the people so you can have an open conversation about how maybe they also want to receive the feedback, because some people might have different needs. So I would focus really on the individual people rather than just their culture, even though that plays a major role and often makes it more difficult, especially if someone is from a different culture.
Yeah, it is. So because like so many times, like, there are cultures where people have a lot of respect for the elders and a lot of respect for the managers, and they wouldn't necessarily criticize them or tell them like openly feedback. So I think we have to create a space like having with HR or somebody else from the team, just briefing them and just giving them the space and to open up and say what they want. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Maybe I can just jump in with a personal experience that I think could be very relevant in this case as well. Very often we think that, just someone has to take care of this, or that in an organization, either HR or the top management should be the initiator of the culture of giving feedback. But actually, from my experience, I have seen that this can also come from bottom up. So if there are several people in the company that feel that there is no right way of giving feedback, or that this is not well accepted, I would encourage, of course, it always depends on the type of organization and so on, right? But there is always a possibility to simply try and step up and have, a lunch session about giving feedback, or bringing, for instance, Susanne and Helena in the company to share about that, kind of starting a discussion, because very often we just think that we know how to give and receive feedback, which very often is not true. And this way we just don't make space in the company for that. But I just wanted to share, it's not necessarily, of course, it would have been amazing that the top management or the HR takes care of this. But if they don't, there is still a possibility for us to, step up and kind of try and encourage this. Okay. Then another point that was mentioned in the chat was by Olivier from Belgium. We went to Belgium. And it was about as well, when we give feedback, that we could ask if the person would be willing to receive the feedback. So not just when we are receiving it, but also when we are giving it. So I think that was very interesting. Olivier, I don't know if you would feel like adding anything to this.
No, thank you. Your presentation was really nice, and I really appreciate. So it's about finding a time and space for feedback, because on a daily basis, sometimes we are rushed out and we don't take the space to accept the feedback as it is in the rush. So it needs to be feedback each week, or a simple email feedback, or because sometimes there are so much rush on the job, and with the rush there are negative energies, and the feedbacks adding to that, it will be overwhelming to some people.
That is true. Maybe I can share something that we do in our team currently, which is called Speedback. So we all get together as a team, and basically, like in speed dating, we form pairs of 2, and we have 5 minutes per group, and we just give each other feedback in that time. So the whole session takes about half an hour to an hour. And so this way we make sure everyone talks to everyone, and it's actually also quite energizing, because you obviously, most of the time, you don't get only constructive feedback, but you also get positive ones. And if you do that once a month or something, it's really cool. Yeah.
And that helps also to make feedback a habit, because I think this is very important in that process, because it's just awkward if we do it once a year or something like that.
Good. And then Andrea said, wouldn't it be even more efficient to coach people on how to ask for feedback? What is your opinion on that? And do you have any recommendations on how to get about this? Did you, Helena, you said several times that you received this training. Can you share more about it? Was this something that you requested? Was that something that you found on your own? Anything you could share about that?
So the training itself was kind of my starting point of working at ThoughtWorks. It was kind of the trainee program, and I really took away a lot from it, because feedback was such an integral part of it. So it really was encouraged to ask for feedback actively, and everybody also was taking notes on what feedback they got. So maybe in the first week you got certain feedback, you decide, okay, maybe over the course of the next weeks, I want to work on that. And so you ask people specifically for feedback about this, and you could see an improvement over the weeks, which also I would recommend. If you take notes of the feedback you get, you can revisit it half a year later and be impressed with yourself, how much you've developed in a certain area, because it's easy to forget where you started, kind of. Yeah.
Cool. So I guess we're coming to the end of the session, but I would still like to leave a moment to anyone who would want to unmute themselves and either ask a question or share something else. Is there anyone who wants to still jump in? Okay, then in this case, let's wrap up. I would say huge thanks to Helena and Susanne. I think it's definitely an amazing thing to start talking about, to actually be aware of. So I hope that everyone here got as inspired as I did. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Happy Friday. Enjoy the rest of August, and then see you in September. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Susanne and Helena. Bye.